And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is my friend John Toda. John has established himself as a pioneer in online education for corporate training. He began his career on Wall Street in sales and technology positions at Payne Weber and UBS. And then in 2002, he founded a company called Edulence, whose focus is developing online training solutions for corporate educators. He then launched a subsidiary of that firm called Knowledge Link, which is connecting great experts to people that want to learn from those experts. So John's been in this space. He's been in online learning since sort of before it was known as online learning. So he's got a lot to share, and he's a fellow part-time New Yorker, although I'm a full-time New Yorker. But thanks for coming on board, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, Peter. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Okay, so 2002, you decide to dive into this sort of corporate online education space. And just to sort of set the table, back in those days, e-learning was going to take over the world. We were never going to learn in person again. And it would take you 9 hours to download what was in essence a PowerPoint that you hit next on. So, right? Is that sort of a
Yeah,
fair
that's about accurate state of the technology in 2002.
and fast forward a couple of weeks, right? Or a couple of decades. Where is it at? So tell me what are the big trends in online learning and talk about it from sort of the buy side and the sell side. What do the clients want and what do authors and thought leaders and speakers need to understand to win?
Yeah, so as you know, I've worked on kind of both sides of the industry for almost my entire career. And we run large scale online universities powered by our technology for a lot of players in the financial services space, as well as some other verticals, but a lot of banks, insurance companies, investment firms. And they're kind of the ones looking to purchase content all the time. And then, of course, we love working with the thought leaders who are producing that great content. And I think to your point, probably what's changed the most since when we first got started is just the availability of bandwidth and the fact that you can have such more robust content, more interactive content that can play in virtually every situation on every type of device. And even when somebody's walking on the street or in a car, which just makes it that much more available, now that you can do it with a cell connection on a phone.
Sure.
That's taken it to that. And I think what that's really led us to is a lot more just in time training that's very much focused on a specific need at a specific time, more micro learning as opposed to the
So
45
so
minute.
let's yeah, let's touch on that because there's a lot in there, right? So the bandwidth actually leads to mobile because in 2002, I think my cell phone weighed 9 pounds, right? So it wasn't really a mobile learning device. Now, the guy next to you or the gal next to you standing at Starbucks is probably watching something that might have an educational element to it. So it's always on all the time, mobile. This on-demand piece, I want to touch on that because I think that's a critical piece. In back in the Stone Ages, when you and I were in school, most adult education or corporate education was push. Here's all the things John might need to know as an X, whatever X might be. Let's just stick the hose in his ear and stick him in class for 3 weeks and he'll learn it. And then we'll put him out in the field. Talk about the sort of the short burst and the pull. Like, so tomorrow I need to have a difficult conversation with an employee. I need to pull something down that tells me how to do that. Tell me about sort of the how that cadence has changed things.
Yeah, and so what we've seen now is that, again, this just-in-time micro learning, where it's very specific to things that you're going through in your business or your career at a particular moment. What's, I think, been a big turning point for us and from a tech perspective is that now these learning systems are integrated to personnel systems. So when you get a new job, you get promoted to a manager, you can be auto assigned a curriculum of content that you can consume at home on your device. You're going in to have a difficult conversation with someone who you now manage, and you've got it on your phone and you can watch it. So I think that availability, the instant availability, and the fact that you have these triggers now because we're so integrated with everything else that a company is tracking about an individual that you can serve up content to their phone at the moment that they need it most.
Yep. And need it meaning because there's an application that they know, again, tomorrow I need to have that conversation, or I've got to sell that new product and I'm not really that familiar with it, or whatever the it is, it's connected to a real life event, not a theoretical, at some point this may happen.
Yeah, and like you said too, this fire hose of content. Back when we first did this, early 2000s, that was the goal. It was like, okay, let's build a library that's got 1,000 titles in it, and when someone comes in, they're just overwhelmed by all this content. And today, that's become the biggest issue: is that I don't know where to go. I need to be pointed to the 20 sessions that I really need at this moment in my career, not the fire hose of content like everyone used to do.
Right. So I mean, we're living, I think, in the first time period where information is at excess, right? There's an abundance of information now where we all sort of were trained in the scarcity piece, right, of information. So now the value comes to give me what I want at the right time, at the right moment, because I don't have time to spend days and days and days and days wading through whatever to serve up the thing that I need. I will trust a partner that gives me what I need in the format I need it when I need it, which is really sort of a totally different play for the learning function inside of a large corporation.
Yeah, and what we say now is that there was a time when the value when you're a content provider, so if you're a thought leader, a professional speaker, author, someone who's delivering content now in these formats, there was a time when you were judged by how many views, how many videos do you have, how many
Right.
logins are we getting and views are we getting? And now we like to shift that and say, no, it's not about that, did 50% or 30% of our population actually log in and look at it? But when you look at that 30%, did they get better in the skill sets that they were
Uh,
weakest at?
Now it's the ROI and the measuring impact, which is a whole
Yeah.
different conversation, right? So I agree with you. It used to be like, wait a minute, only 22% of my people, took that class. Okay, well, that's an argument to say that the class isn't working. But now that you can say, but wait, it may only be 10%, but look at how much better that 10% that took that negotiation skills program did over some period of time post, and say, wow, what's your ROI on that? My people are closing better, faster, more profitable deals, whatever the KPI might be.
Yeah, and that's where like I'm on my soapbox lately about skills-based training because
Yep.
I feel like we helped create that because we got into this space so early that it was like, "Oh, how many views did you get? Did you get 10,000 views this week? 15,000?" Well, it's always going to pale in comparison to the 100 million views a YouTuber's getting, right? So like it's never going to look that good anyway, and you're always up against this wall when you're selling content to these big buyers that they're going to look at and say, well, only 20% showed up, only 30% showed up. And you, as the content provider, can't really do much about that because some people just never engage. But like you said, I love this model of saying, hey, our business case is really based on if those 20%, 30%, the 1,000 people who actually did show up and do it, we did assessments at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and we know that they actually got better in the areas they needed to get better at. And that's now I feel like that's the way you have to go as a content provider because there's so much noise out there. Everybody's got an online course, you know?
Well, and you're not gonna compete with a Kardashian, right? So, like, why
Right.
why bother? And it's not the right metric. My guest today, and I'm really excited about today, is Patricia Fripp. Patricia has written a ton of books. She has been a speaker, and she's a CSP, CPA, AE Hall of Fame speaker. She was the first female president of the NSA, and that's the National Speakers Association, which has over 3,500 members. She's been a member of the Speakers Roundtable. We can go on and spend our entire time today talking about the coaching that she does and the training that she does and the keynotes that she does. But let's just dive right in. So let me go to the other side of that. The buyer, the pricing, two very different markets, right? Because if I'm hiring you to work with me directly, that's going to be quite expensive, relatively speaking, right? If I'm a sales leader and I say, wow, she's a game changer. We brought her in for our keynote. She coached me personally. My results went through the roof. But I've got, whatever, 800 people on the team. There aren't 800, there aren't hours in the day or days in the month or whatever to have you, even if budget wasn't an issue for the team. How do you basically take sort of the same content at different ends of the price spectrum?
Well, of course, and this is why more and more companies demand from their vendors, we need at least part of your training has to be online because our salespeople are all over the world or our engineers are all over the world. We are never going to get them together. And so this is why online. Now, if it's an individual, I say, look, for less than 1 hour of my coaching, you can you can have access to my Frip VT for a year. So if you just go through the core, how to structure, how to open, how to connect your audience, how do you find content, how do you get specific, how do you open with impact, how do you tell stories, go through that, and then our more expensive time will be shortened. So that works very well. Yes, it's a money saver and it's much, but with a large company, the more people you have, the less it costs. And what we always do with all our clients, we will deliver and we record it, but it's a kickoff session where one, I take their content. So have our salespeople or our engineers or whoever have to deliver. So I hear a sample of their presentations. I'm familiar with the conversations they have.
So you're putting a custom front end bumper or something on it. So it's not just, yeah.
Exactly. A custom front end, and then show them how to use the system. And because there's testing, tracking, and monitoring, the managers can see who's taking it, who's passing the test. And then I will build in, as long as people are active, I'm happy every 3 months do another session or
I
go
love
to
it.
different offices. So it can be customized and very personalized. So they get a sample, they get me, but it's going to be more in Zoom. It's not going to be in person because, and I mean, even have companies, Fortune 100 companies, say our budget won't match it. Can you do it online?
So it allows you to scale. It allows you to touch more people. It allows you to make more money. Answer this for me, because I have a feeling you're going to answer it the way I would. One of the things I hear from folks is, oh, but if you could buy me for, whatever, a couple $100s a year on a subscription basis, why would you pay me tens of thousands? It has to cannibalize the business. Tell me, give me your take on that from the field.
My approach is it adds to, it does not subtract. One of my biggest clients, I mean, big clients. I train over 100 engineers twice a year in Zoom, go on location. I'm only just infiltrating with my Frip VT. Yet I have other companies. I'm getting ready for one right now. It's 2 days of in-person training. It's a kickoff webinar next Tuesday to prepare them. It's 2 days of training and then a year of repetition and reinforcement for VT. That's ideal.
So it's a bundled solution where there's a place for you personally and a place for both, and it's that right mix of learning. So for you, it's actually obviously been a win, as it should
Yeah.
be for most if done well. And I think what I was going to ask, oftentimes it also gives you another door, meaning another way to come in, right? So if somebody's on video, it's a low risk way for a client to sort of experiment with you. Maybe one person, maybe 20 people, maybe 30, whatever. They see it, they like it, and it generates demand up the food chain. And then I'm sure you have clients that started with a couple people on video and now keynoting and doing integrated learning journeys that might last a year. Is that fair?
That's accurate.
Fantastic.
It
So
works both ways. And of course, for me, I have a lot of fans, whether they're speakers, Toastmasters, or they're familiar with me, that they could never, and realistically, they wouldn't. I'm not going to take someone's money if they can't get it back. It's, in other words, oh, I want to be a famous speaker. Well, chances are you're not going to be. Until we get you closer there, you don't want to pay someone like me $10,000 to build a speech that you don't know how to market.
right. So it's a risk management piece. So they can build up to that if they actually take the learning that's in the video, apply it, do some things. Now they've managed the risk and know it's worth the investment in whatever it is, $10,000 to write a speech, because there's a market for it. So that's great. Let me as we're starting to run out of time here, I could talk to you for hours because this is great stuff. What would you advise someone that's been in the NSA somewhere between, let's say, 42 years and 2 years, right? That has not crossed over me, and when I mean crossed over, moved from having their entire business be based on them getting paid to do stuff to transforming that business into one where that is but one leg in the stool, to have a more robust blended digital, non-digital enterprise? What should they look out for? What should they consider? What traps to avoid? How would you counsel them? And by the way, we're getting thousands of dollars worth of amazing insight from you, which I appreciate on behalf of everyone.
Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. At the beginning, you will be overwhelmed, and I'm sure this is true in any industry. You're overwhelmed with what there is to do, and so many people telling you must do this. You cannot do it all, so hand pick what it is you're going to focus on. So, for example, rather than having Facebook Lives every week, I would much rather you build a website or develop a blog that will have greater impact than just the people you know. So you have to have an online presence.
Yep.
I wouldn't, at the beginning of your career, focus on, what is your niche? What is your target audience? I said, anyone who will pay you is your market at the beginning. But however, develop a certain expertise. And the moment you realize I have expertise, and whether I deliver this to one person as a coach or a consultant, whether I deliver it to 50 people as an all-day or 2-day training program, whether I deliver it online or whether I deliver it as a keynote, this is my expertise. Because there are celebrity keynotes that do nothing else. However, I consider most real working speakers, especially for 40 years, you have to be able to deliver your content in however the clients want to buy it. Have a balanced business, but at the beginning, develop your expertise, and you will find the market. You'll know where you belong more. You just have to trust the process. And then when you find yourself in an industry, what you need to do is maximize it.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Today, my guest is Vince Poscente, and I got to tell you, I was reading Vince's bio, which is like 72 pages, and said, wow, this might be intimidating. So I'll just give you some highlights. So he went from being a recreational skier to an Olympic athlete in just 4 short years. He's an award-winning sales and marketing exec. He has a master's in organizational management, one of only 4 people on the planet to be inducted into the USA and the Canadian Speaker Hall of Fame. Obvious stuff like, New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And he's been on Himalayan expeditions. I think most of us know Vince mostly as an amazing keynoter and someone that has been and stays very active in the space for a long time. So welcome aboard, Vince. Thanks for coming on board.
Peter, I'm a huge fan of anything you do. So when you called, I said yes, and I didn't know what I was saying yes to.
Oh, that was good. We might change that. So talk for a moment, if you would. One of the things I find shocking is this, what would I call it? Sort of the petunia factor of speakers, right? Where they don't realize that they're in a business and customer service matters. So for example, when an agent calls you and it takes you 3 days to respond, guess what?
Yeah.
You just lost the gig. I mean, we're literally now a race for speed almost in minutes, right? And if you're not responsive, guess what? They've got a list of 10 other folks that do what you do, or they can sell to their client. Then their demands, I only fly first class and, all that. Talk about sort of how do you, the relationships that you've forged with agents that you've worked with for a long time, how do you make each other's lives easier?
Well, I leverage technology. So I make sure that I get if it's somebody important that I'm with HubSpot. And I make sure that when I get a call, it immediately texts me that this person has called. Make sure you call them back. Because if it's a lead, a follow-up, whether it's an agent or a lead through HubSpot, I instantly call them back. And, I wrote a book that the New York Times bestseller it ended up being, which is called The Age of Speed. So here's a tip. If you write a book about speed, you screw yourself if you're slow.
So maybe you need to write a book about, the power of the pause in the sales process or
So
something.
just it's just getting after it and making them the priority right then and there. I don't know how
Yes.
you're dealing with this right now, but there's so many of these spam calls, and I don't know every agent's number, and so they're
Yep.
coming in and they're ending up being in maybe voicemail, or maybe they don't like to leave voicemail. I don't know, but I know I'm losing time because these filters are pushing them into my voicemail box. And so I haven't figured that one out yet, but it's all about meshing technology and then just making them a priority. And you know what they say consistently? They're shocked that I reached back to them so quickly.
Right, right, and but it says something, right? So if they've reached out, because listen, if an agent reached out to you, let's be honest, more likely than not, they've reached out to three others. So it's just
Yeah,
one point in the process to show that you're
right.
serious. What else can you do as a speaker to be sort of agent friendly?
Yeah, so I just did it yesterday, as a matter of fact. I was in Nashville. I gave a speech to a very large American association. There was 1,000 people in the room. That's the priority. But I flew in early and I left late. I rented a car and
Yep.
I popped down to that speaker bureau, and not all the agents were there. But you know what happened? The ones that couldn't be there ended up coming on board through Zoom.
Yeah.
So I had an
Yep.
in person and a digital
Yeah.
meeting with all of them, and I'm launching this new speech to the safety world. It's called Radical Safety, and I'm not
Yep.
going to all the bureaus and telling them what it is. I'm not going to everybody. I'm going to curate the people that need to see this and want to see it, who have clients that book these kind of safety conferences. So, that tip is good old fashioned relationships. It's not about
Yeah.
SEO or any of that. And I'm not trying to be old fashioned here. I'm just realizing that you don't get booked if there's not a relationship.
And you don't get booked if you're a jerk, if you're difficult to deal with, if you make ridiculous demands,
Oh,
if you treat agents as if they're some subservient, lower class citizen or something, that word gets around. And there are fewer and fewer speakers that actually have a really good reputation just as human beings,
uh-huh.
on the agent side. And I think that comes back. I want to flip to the other side now, given that the market shifted, because agents are still important, bureaus are still important. But if 70% of the business is coming direct, give us if someone's new to the game, let's say they're less than 3 years into the space on the speaking side,
Yeah.
give us a handful of tips of things that they need to be doing to generate inquiries and leads and drive the business directly. Because you can't just, the old days you go get listed at 10 bureaus and sit back and, take up golf
Yeah.
and wait for the phone to ring. Those days are over.
Yeah.
What do you do to shake the trees yourself?
So, number one, you have to have what I call a DVP, or a distinct value proposition. And that DVP is, I mean, it has to be distinct. So if
Hence
you
the
say,
D.
right, not general,
Yeah.
not the general value proposition, the distinct. And so, an example was, when I keep coming back to Keith Harrell, but he's since passed away. But I was reading all these Harvard Business Review articles
Yep.
and all this branding stuff, and I was getting my master's, as you mentioned, and and his distinct value proposition had cheese all over it. It was called "Attitude is Everything," right? And I looked it down my nose at that, and
Yeah.
I thought, how ridiculous! Do you know how busy that guy was? And the reason he was busy is he was very distinct in what he was offering. It
Okay.
was attitude. Attitude is everything. And when clients said, "We need that," then you've got that good start. Scott Gross had,
Yep.
in what are there, 5,000 customer service speakers, 10,000.
Yep.
He was positively outrageous service. So he had something very distinct. The second piece is lead with a video trailer, and there's all sorts of opinions across the
Yep.
board. I'm more of a fan of about 6-7 minutes, because I feel that if they're going to make that big ass decision of that the fee, I'm paying that much money, they want to see some evidence that you're worth it. So, but then the third piece is getting on YouTube and Vimeo, and then launching a bunch of 70-second, not more than 2-minute videos of your content, your expertise.
So wait, so let's talk about the video piece, because a lot of folks differ. it's hard for them to differentiate their reel, and we could debate whether it should be 2 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever. But the reel is basically the sample of this is who I am and what I do. Big audience, small audience reaction, blah, blah, blah. Like, sort of almost a template, right? But I love this concept of the short form little snack, right? That you're actively going out there onto YouTube. Are those stage clips, or are those you at your desk? Are they formal? Are they professional? Give us a sense of sort of the production values, and is it more content? Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. Let's start here. It has to have the viewer go, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way.
So that's content, not production value per se, right?
Before production value, oh, I haven't thought of it that way. I just a few days ago spoke with George Campbell. He years ago came out with Joe Malarkey, the world's worst motivational speaker.
Yep.
I had shared office space with the speaker bureau, and they would watch that video for lunch because it was so freaking entertaining. And the video production quality was horrible, but it was flat out funny. I'd never seen anything like that. Gee, I hadn't thought of it that way. So when you lead with that, then the production value, if you've got stuff on stage, take a clip that's less than 2 minutes and put it on the internet. If you've got a clip that you're walking down the street that, you say, I was thinking something, and then you lay it out there in a way that's either innovative or counterintuitive, you're going to have the viewers go, this guy's on his game, or this person's on his or her game.
So it's a combination then, right? So
yeah,
thoughtful, insightful, and a decent production quality. Any other recommendations for folks earlier on trying to, because there's no barrier to entry, right? Anybody could say, hey, peterspeaker.com and go check me out or whatever. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.